Hello and welcome to How I Ally. This is Lucinda Koza, and I am here with my second male guest ever.
I'm honored.
Yes. And I'm going to ask him to introduce himself and give a little bit of a backstory for our listeners.
For sure. My name is Rich Heller, and I have a practice that I call Rich in Relationship, which is also a podcast, and it's in all kinds of good places. I'll spare you the details for now. And I work with primarily with couples who feel like they've lost their way, that they started out in love and very passionate, and somehow they'd become roommates or maybe even worse than roommates. Maybe they're like really unhappy roommates, which, believe it or not, Lucinda, is very common in our culture today. And I've lived this and I've worked actually for years now with couples in this position. And it's a passion, it's a personal mission for me to help parents in particular to restore joy, restore a sense of prosperity and more than money, feeling like they're living the richest emotional life possible to their marriage for themselves and for their children. And my own story is part of what contributes to that, but I don't think we have a lot of time for that today.
I, of course, I want to hear your story, maybe abridged, but
I got a lot of years. The short story is I grew up in a very, what we call a high conflict household. And my
Mm,
parents, it was best for my brother and I when nobody was there. It was okay if one of them was there. It was terrible if both of them were there. And so part of making good out of that history is taking the lessons and the learnings that I have in my own healing and growth from growing up there and learning how to have a partnership instead of taking a hostage in my marriage, and taking those lessons and applying them professionally with the people that I work with. And I've got years of experience working outpatient with addicts and alcoholics and their families who very much follow that pattern. So that's what drew me into it. And it seems to be an area that not a lot of people want to work in. They don't like the conflict part, but I have a pretty high threshold for it.
really, you mean for working on
For other
conflict?
people's crap. I have a high threshold for other people's crap. So if they come in the room and they explode, I'm like, okay, been there, done that. So now what?
Thank God for you. Really. That's what people need.
Sometimes they need more than that, but the good start. A lot of people who do the work that I do, honestly, do not have their conflict avoidant. And so they put a lot of rules around people a lot of family therapists and folks who do this work. They put a lot of rules in the room that they're working. You can't interrupt each other. You can't be explosive. You can't do that. And the problem with that is that couples learn how to behave really well in the room with the counselor or the therapist, but then they can't take those rules home with them. And it only works in a controlled environment. If an alcoholic, he went to rehab and never learned how to work, how to survive in the world, it's very.
Right.
And so, to some extent, part of the healing has to be letting that stuff out in front of somebody else and then having them guide you through what's that really about? What did you really want to say? What's underneath? Why are you going from 0 to 60? What is the extra emotion that's showing up in the room? Because usually when we go off, there's a good reason for it, but the problem is we explode.
Right. In a moment that doesn't seem to warrant an explosion, but it's coming from some other moment and being carried into the present moment.
Exactly right. And when one person goes from 0 to 60, it is not unusual for the other person to feel just a little defensive, just a little triggered, just a little reactive, and they go from 0 to 60, and that just starts. It's like a black hole of blame and anger. There's no stopping that train once it leaves the station until both people are exhausted and go to their corners. Sometimes they have good makeup sex afterwards in the throes of it, but after a while, even that goes away.
And that's just like you said, the way you grew up. It's just it could be so damaging and so devastating to do that, to go into that black hole in front of your children.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Very. And then the children, I argue that children are going to need therapy no matter what. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, but it would be better if it wasn't quite so traumatic.
And if you can, it seems to me, I'm not the professional here, but it seems to me that if you can show that if you can admit you made a mistake or admit that you did something wrong, and then you can show that you're working on it, that that's something. That's you're never going to be perfect, but showing that you're trying to be better is better than
Oh,
nothing.
I think that's huge. I think making yourself vulnerable to your partner, owning your stuff is tremendous. The only catch to that is if you're in that sort of spiral, the partner 9 times out of 10 will see that as an opportunity to go in for the kill. Like my own wife used to say to me, no matter what I say, you just keep going. Even when I do what you just said, she was in therapy. She would come and she would stop the dynamic. She would say, "Yeah, I get it. I made a mistake here." And I would go, "That's right. You made a mistake, and let me tell you all about it." So, like in the moment, when both partners are what we call it in therapy an amygdala hijack. When that part of the brain is active, both partners, if one of them exposes their belly, 9 times out of 10, the other one's going to be too fired up to step in and to say, "Yeah, thank you for saying that." It takes getting out of that part of your brain that's fight, flight, or play dead and being rational. And if the chemistry is really going, if you're riding that wave of emotional rage, it's very hard to step out of it. And kudos to my wife that she could. And it's taken some time now. We don't have that dynamic anymore. And it's taken some time now when she says, "Yeah, you're right." I can say thank you. But that's yours. That's work. That's
Oh,
so you want to be careful with that. Probably the best thing is when two people are in that spiral, step out, reset. The studies show it takes at least 20 minutes for the whole body chemistry to change. You want to go out for a walk and get some of that stuff out of your system. And then maybe when both people are chill, then you can say, "All right, I'm ready to own my part." No one's 100% responsible.
that's so important. So, I mentioned before we started recording, I'm really interested in why having children can for women, I know there's so much going on with hormones and changes in the brain, literally. There's so much going on. There's postpartum rage that can happen, but seem to find a lot of young parents hating each other.
Very painful. And also, I just want to take a second to acknowledge the work that you're doing here with your podcast in regard to women who have just had children. I think that's something we walk into marriage or if not marriage, having children without a handbook, without a real understanding of what it means. No matter how many books you read, no matter how many people you talk to, you can't know. And so it's great that I love that you're doing this work, that you're putting it out there. And to answer your question, two people do the fall in love thing. And when you're in love, all your pistons are firing. You're speaking all the love languages, you're giving gifts, you're spending quality time, you're affirming each other, you're touching each other, I'm missing one of the five love languages ever, you're doing them all. Because you're in it, and everyone around you is happy for you, and even your boss is all right. So you're screwing off a little at work, but I get it. You're in love, right? Everyone gives us a little grace for that, right? But you have a cap on that. There's a study show 2, maybe 3 years if you're lucky, and one person always drops out before the other. But you get married, right? And then in love stage, "Oh, will you marry me?" "I do." You get married, and then you have those kids, and which I said earlier, and from personal experience, nobody can prepare you for that. And all of a sudden, not only are you not in love, But the two of you are trying to juggle a lopsided plate or something, right? Like having a kid is just, oh my God, how do we do this? So first you're trying to figure out how to do it. The woman is going through now 9 months of hormone detox. The guy, of us guys, not even, we don't even know the words of emotion, much less emotional fluency. So we don't know how to say what we're feeling. We don't know how to put words to what we're feeling because we've been trained not to. My friend John Schinner was on my podcast recently talking about the man box. In the man box, there's no emotion. You just get the job done. And then, so we have no ability to really empathize with our wives who have gone through 9 months of intense hormone change, this unbelievable experience of giving birth, incredibly painful and incredibly joyful, and then 9 months of emotional change back to normalcy. We don't,
Right.
totally unrelatable to us. And plus, we have no words. And what I think for the men, I can't speak for the woman because I haven't been there yet. Give me a lifetime or two, to my knowledge. But speaking for the men, I think what happens is guys are linear thinkers. They want to fix, they want to repair, they want to help, but we don't have we haven't given ourselves the emotional tools to help with this. And this requires emotional connection, emotional fluency is what I call it, a richer relationship. And we barely put words to our emotion. And I think in the frustration of trying to fix and help in ways that the wife totally doesn't need or want receive, it looks like manipulation or control in that state, like the whole thing just explodes.
Yeah.
And then it triggers then the old stuff comes in, right? We're married, all of our tapes from what our parents did when we were kids start playing. Your wife becomes your mother, your husband becomes your father, or maybe your husband becomes your mother, and maybe all of it. It gets real crazy real fast.
Yeah. That's yes. Like I just discovered that recently that sometimes if my husband I'm just going to spill my beans here. If my husband leaves the house at the particularly wrong second, I turn into 12-year-old Lucinda, and I'm feeling like my dad is abandoning the kids and the family, and I mean, right away, I feel that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. If that was your experience when you were 12 and that feeling, that experience, the programming that was our parents laid this stuff into us and we received it. It's what worked in in our ecology then. If that's been laid into us and it hasn't been altered, that's going to get triggered and it's going to come right up. And that's just how we are as human beings. And so for people who are in the position of being triggered, the trick is to let go of the old emotion, and that takes a little work because our unconscious mind groups. It isn't just dad at 12, it's a bunch of other experiences all lined up to validate this belief that whatever the belief is, when I really need help, they always walk out or whatever. It's some story we make up. And to let go of that, it takes some work. And then we got to lay in a new program, which is positive. And that takes some effort. I do a process called mental and emotional release with clients that's super helpful with that. It's very intensive, very hardcore, and it's pretty much 100% effective as far as I can tell. I give people a money back guarantee, and no one's ever asked for it. But I want you to know that you're not alone. Everybody's having this experience, not just people who have just given birth, but people in all kinds of situations, and particularly in our marriages. I've come to believe, Lucinda, that we pick our partners because we feel safe enough to unpack our stuff around each other. But the problem is we didn't give each other that heads up. Hey, heads up. I'm going to unpack all my childhood shit and you're going to have to deal with it. And because they don't know that, they think it's about them.
Oh, oh no,
I
that's
don't know.
fine.
Might be a podcast.
Please, this conversation warrants colorful language.
I
That
also want to say in your defense, think about it. It's only been over the last 50 years that guys have really had the opportunity to be present for their wives and their children. So, like culturally, There's that we haven't been trained into this, and it literally is about experience and training. Half of it is that we aren't very good with emotion, and half of it is that this territory of what masculinity is in 2025 is really new.
That is and you talked about that in your interview, in the printed interview, and I find that's so true for the man and for me as well, because my parents did not have that, like, dynamic at all, and I guess it wasn't really expected of my dad to be present or be nearly as involved as, I guess, men are becoming today.
All the movement is not just towards maternity leave, but now paternity leave as well. My daughter just had a baby 6 months ago, and her husband has been taking
Well,
paternity leave to take care of the child. And it's been crazy watching her go back to work and trust him with being the dad. She
wow.
was the
Yeah.
mom, and now he's the dad. And he does it completely differently there, and the baby freaked out. The baby, wait a minute,
Oh,
where's my
yeah.
breast milk that came from a warm human being instead of a bottle? What's up with this? Baby tested the crap out of him, but he's getting there.
Yeah.
That's
Oh.
really new. When I was a kid,
Yes.
my parents got divorced when I was 12, and I chose to go live with my father after a year, which freaked him out. Like all of his previous kids, he had shuttled off on his other wives. I was the one who said, "Dad, I want to live with you." And the way he handled it was he imported a woman to take care of me, basically. Who is still one of my many stepmoms today. And she took great care of me.
Wow.
I did not
Wow.
know what to do, and so he brought in the A team.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Guys are clueless, but I think we're getting a clue. My son-in-law is an example of he's getting a clue.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
huge turning point, like for sexuality right now. Not only are there multiple genders, but that there's an opportunity for men to get out of the box where I'm the high plains drifter who never really has relationships and I'm always ready for warfare and like to move out of that nonsense into I'm a human being. Human beings have what feelings? It's like a whole other planet. Big opportunity though.
Absolutely. I've even, noticed it with my father. Now in his he's about to turn 80. He is very emotional now, but that could also be a bunch of other factors, but yeah, there's no box, like you said, just because you have feelings and you wanna be home with the kids and wear freaking pink or whatever, you are still you could still be straight. There's no longer this, or at least in the circles that I run in, longer this, "Oh, you're gay. Oh, you're gay. Oh, you're gay."
I heard this. What did he call himself? An evolutionary psychologist or something like that. He's been interviewed on some of these podcasts, and he said, these were his words. Right, I'm not making this up. He said the new phase of evolution is that women find men who are a little bit gay to be more attractive. And he said, no, he says, we can't put the genes for this gayness. Cannot be. He's literally talking about this. And I was like, what if what you're really talking about here is that women who find men who are in touch with their feelings are more attractive? And he goes, of course, they can't be completely gay because then you can't have babies. So that's actually not true. He's got some misunderstandings. But I think the thing that he's identified is emotional availability. If toxic masculinity, that thing that we see on the internet, are these guys who are like, my woman does what I say, and I'm strong and I get what I want and I've got the nice car. It's all about materialism and feelings. What are those? If that's toxic masculinity, then by inference, healthy masculinity is going to be ability to feel, ability to connect, ability to emote. But I still think that it's hardwired into guys to be productive. But let's just go back to, so here you are, you've got a new baby and things are rough. The first thing that I would, if I'm going to write a prescription that didn't involve any outside help, just, what the, for starters, I would say for starters, whenever you get into, and this is for anyone, but particularly in the situation that we started talking about, when you start getting into that spiral where it feels like you hate each other, or you're angry at each other, or you're blaming each other, it's better to be in separate corners than to engage in that thing. That it's a destructive kind of, the reason I say it's a destructive black hole is it just sucks you deeper and deeper. And if a relationship is a bank account, right? When a couple does that, they are withdrawing money from the bank account, and after a while, the bank account goes into negative, right? And it seems like, why am I in this marriage? Which is a terrible experience to have when you just had a baby. And so you don't want to draw from that bank account. You just want to, like, just stop doing the negative stuff, right? If you can't put good stuff in, don't take the good stuff out by hammering each other. That would be number one, right? Go to your corners and reset. Then number two would be, if you really want to share feelings, there's a frame in psychology that's very well known called I statements. I talk about this all the time with people. An I statement is, "Hey, Rich. Hey, Rich. I'm really frustrated right now because I've been taking care of the baby all day, and you come home and I'm really frustrated when I've been taking it. I'm really frustrated. That's the next part is the when. When and the situation. You come home. I've been after being at work and don't even want to pick him up. And then the because. And because when I was 12 years old, the same thing happened, and I don't want to see that happen to our child. So the because is the really important part. It needs to be about me. The situation is what's actually happening. The feeling is the feeling you're actually happening. But the because is because it brings up in me an old memory, because it brings up in me a fear. When it starts becoming because you're a nasty jerk and I hate you, then it's you've blown the whole thing up. It's become a blame statement instead of an I statement. So start with an I statement and see if they can receive it. Right? If they
Mhm.
can't receive the I statement, if that triggers them, then they've probably got something going on big too. Usually, an I statement, when properly delivered, builds empathy. But sometimes when the other person's a little fired up, it'll bring a negative response anyway. Kind of like when my wife said to me, "Hey, I get it. It's my fault." And I'm like, now I can really get her. But if you're already fired up, it doesn't matter what the other person says. So I statements are super powerful just for letting out that feeling. And you can share it with them with saying, I don't need to fix this. I don't need to change this. I just need you to know the experience that I'm having. That it's my feeling. The feelings are irrational. They're not my feelings are not your fault, right? My feelings and this experience brings up this feeling and it has to do with who I am and what my expectations are or whatever. Like it becomes like painting a canvas for them. So and it's like the opposite of what we do when we're frustrated. Usually it goes like this. Hey, Rich, you're such a jerk. You came home, you didn't kiss me, you didn't even pick up the baby. I've been here all day. I'm so pissed off and it's all your fault. Right? That's the opposite, right? That's what we're trained to do.
Right.
So the I statement, and here's the reason why I statements work for us, if not for them, is forcing ourselves to speak in a form. I am feeling X when the situation, because something about me, even though I want to blame them, I always want to blame the other person. I'm going to tell you, Lucinda, I've had years of therapy. I still want to blame everybody, right? I'm working on it. I don't do it. I don't go there. I notice it. I move past it, but it's still present for me. I got some release work to do. But because I'm sticking to that form, it keeps me from getting my amygdala, that fight, flight, or play dead part of my brain, from really getting fired up. I notice it's a little active, but because the part of my brain that's thinking is making me stick to the format, I stay in my rational brain. Now, do not do this at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, people are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. They don't have a lot of patience or emotional energy. It's a better activity like on Saturday morning or something.
It's actually really important.
Yeah, and if you're a new mother, I'm speaking to all you new moms out there. If you're a new mother, you're probably hungry, angry, lonely, and tired a good deal of the time. Your body's
Right.
recovering from having that baby, depending on how far along you are. Your hormones are shifting back to normalcy, but they're still pretty churned up. And you're being woken up at all, you're probably both being woken up at all hours of the night. So if a couple is short on sleep, they're going to get triggered a lot more easily. And you're going to get angry more easily. And then feeling alone, even if you're with the baby, is a lot easier. Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired are major triggers for amygdala overreaction, intensity, especially if you're like hormonally shifting. And give yourself some grace. Give yourself some grace.
Yeah.
I witnessed the birth of three of them. Two of them are another man's child through my wife, or mine now.
Mm.
I've taken
Mm.
them, but I witnessed three births, and it wasn't until we got to the last one that I really learned, as a guy, learned how to be there for my wife, even though I was in the room watching it. We're very thick creatures, men. If you look at the brain structure of men and the brain structure of women, we don't have a lot of connections between the two lobes. So we tend to stay very rational or very creative. And honestly, it's more rational than creative. And we're a little thick.
Is that but is that true?
It's true.
Sorry.
It's scientifically validated. Women have more connections between the lobes. They have greater emotional fluency. Women have. If I wanted to be more, if I wanted to honor the kind of gender fluidity, I would say brains that float
Right.
in estrogen. Brains that float in estrogen. Those brains have better peripheral vision, have pick up on micro expressions and body language better than brains that float in testosterone. If you have a brain that floats in testosterone, but you're sure you're a woman, you still have the limitations of a brain that floats in testosterone. If you have a brain that floats in estrogen and you're sure that you're a man, you still have the limitations and strengths of a brain that floats in estrogen. This is like chemical, neurological fact.
Wow.
So women are more emotionally fluid by nature, or brains that float in estrogen are more emotionally fluid by nature. And guys, not only do they have a brain that's not as good at that, they can learn it. We can learn it. We're teachable, but we've also got thousands of years of having it our way, so we haven't had to. You all have had to kick ass and take names for thousands of years in a male-dominated society, so you've gotten really good at being linear and goal-oriented. That's why women are taking territory in corporate America and men are on our heels. Like we haven't figured out, oh my God, we need to change too.
Wow. Thank you for that. That was beautiful. That was a sound bite for the ages. That was
I
great.
can work on those sound bites. At my age, you take all the sound bites you can get.
It's true. It doesn't occur to, especially a white heterosexual male, maybe Christian, it doesn't occur to them that they might have to do some work
Well,
and
I
change.
will just state for the record that I am a white Christian heterosexual male. So there are exceptions. And by and large, I would agree with you. But honestly, African American men, not so different in terms of this.
Mm,
Really, it is, or Latinos, not so different. This is a guy thing. Yeah,
yeah.
white men have been on the tippy top in our country. Maybe not in South Africa right now. That's why the president's welcoming all those white guys from over there, over here. But it's a guy thing. Almost universally. The only cultures I've heard of that somebody brought to my attention recently that might be different are certain island communities. And the reason is apparently this mindset has to do with, are you at threat of war? So if you live in a South Pacific island where there has been war in a long time, the men are much more emotionally fluent and the culture is very different.
Wow.
So there's something about our being on war standing since basically the American Revolution that has built this up too.
Women have always been down, even when they've been in power, like Queen Elizabeth, not the most recent one. because she didn't really have real power.
I'd argue that women have power, have always had power, and it's more like there's this old Greek thing called the master slave dialectic, right? And the argument was that the slave had as much power as the master, so because the master needs the slave, right? Now, I'm not saying men were masters and women are slaves, but when men are in power or on top, they still need women, and women, there is power in being needed. But I wholeheartedly agree that we are only finally moving into a time when we are acknowledging that men and women are completely equal. We're not yet seeing, the women are starting to make the same money for the same jobs, but we're moving to this time now. Here's this really interesting, where many couples, women are making more than the guy. And that's really what's driving it home, is when the woman becomes the prime wage earner, the prime breadwinner, that forces, and I'm in a household like that right now. I used to be the prime wage earner. Now I'm not. Forces change. You either wig out and leave the marriage, or you start to think about what it means to be a man in a very different light.
Yeah, you're forced to. That's great
Yeah. It's an amazing thing that's happening in our culture. But boy, is it painful.
for all of
Yeah.
us. But
Change.
but
We
for
all have claw
yeah.
marks behind us, it's like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say, for
But
women who are going through this transition and it seems tough, give yourself grace, be patient, start to find that, use I statements just to unwind, build a community also of other women who have been there and who are going there, super important, and be patient, because this too shall pass. Both will learn how to show up for the child. The hormone change will come to an end. The freaking kid will start sleeping. Oh, it will get better. But right now, the change is still happening at such a high pace. It's really hard to set things straight.
so like in your published interview, do you feel like saving marriages, saving families, having a positive influence on as many marriages as you can, that that's hugely influential on society as a whole. Do you think?
Yeah, and I want to preface this with, sometimes marriages can't be saved, right? It's both people have to want it. But here's what's really important. All right, I started out as a divorce coach years and years ago, and bumbled into couples work when the pandemic came because nobody was getting divorced. The courts were closed. And I happened to get mediation training and couples training just before the pandemic started. It was a very timely pivot for me. But the studies show that the children who have the highest sense of well-being or happiness, the, these are children where both parents are married and they're working at being on the same page, because two people are never perfectly on the same page. The next level of well-being for children is children whose parents are divorced and working at being on the same page in regard to the children. So it's more important for parents to be on the same page in terms of the children than living married. The next level of well-being is people who are divorced but not on the same page. The lowest level of child well-being in these studies are people who are married and kicking the crap out of each other. And so I would say my mission more is about helping parents get on the same page. If that means apart, I do something called parent coordination work, where people who are getting divorced and are having trouble figuring out how to parent together need help getting on the same page. So I help them get on the same page. It's almost exactly the same as couples work, except the focus is the children instead of the marriage.
Wow.
So like if
Wow.
you're thinking about children, number one, parents are on the same page. Number two, and married. Number two, parents are on the same page and divorced. They can't stand living with each other, but they have the same basic values and want the same thing for the children. Three, divorced and kicking each other's butt is still better than married and kicking each other's butt. And it goes back to where we started. You were saying in the very beginning of this interview, when that dynamic is present, where people are just shredding each other, it's incredibly traumatic for the children.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a violent. It's violence. It's witnessing violence, really.
Emotional violence, which is something we're only just coming to recognize as a problem. We thought it was enough that we ended corporal punishment. Well, some people still do it. Some people still give little spanks and stuff like that. But it's actually the emotional violence that really hurts the children. It brings them a lot of fear. You're
Wow.
almost better off getting spanked casually than seeing your parents
I
fight
know.
violently. No one's done that study, thank God. But I don't think you
Yeah.
can morally. We're going to take one group of parents who smack their children with a smile and another group of parents who don't hit their children but are shredding each other. I just don't think you can do that one.
Yeah, God. No, that's not okay. Oh, man. Oh, wow. I think how did you and your wife get how did you and your wife become not in that place where you were?
This is my second marriage,
Okay.
and my wife and I both had really special first marriages. She was married to a guy who was very emotionally violent, and I was married to a woman who was clinically depressed. So we came from opposite experiences. And as a result, I think we both had a lot of gratitude for each other. We have both
Mhm.
done a lot of work, personal work. And when that thing that I was telling you about, where we would get into those fights and I wouldn't back off. I think because of the work that I had done when she said that, I went and worked with a professional on it. As like, hey, you know what? My wife says, and guess what? It's true. Like first, I had to admit it to someone else. I couldn't admit it to her because I was too proud. And then once I admitted it to someone else, I could go back to her with it. And it's really interesting having worked through that. The new piece for us is there are things that she hasn't been talking to me about that I know bother her that I think are based on that. And that was years, by the way, that was years ago. I think what happens is you work through a dynamic and then you settle into a new rhythm. And then one of you does some work and you go, wow, we could be closer, but there's something in the way. And then they identify what that thing is in the way. And I sent her this email saying, I've noticed that you don't want to talk about this and this. And I'm not sending you this email like as a criticism. I'm saying when you're ready, I'd really like to talk about those things. I completely understand, given how I used to be, why it might not feel safe for you to talk about these things. And I want you to know I'm ready to make it safe for us to talk about them. And it was so funny. The first thing she said was, I'm not going to talk about this now. We were in the car together. She said, I'm not going to talk about this now. But that conversation's coming.
That's that's beautiful what you said, to make it safe. I feel like that is a huge thing that especially a man, because I I'll speak for myself, but also for all of my female friends. When you're with a man, there's always this thing in the back of your head that's he could beat the shit out of me or kill
That's
me.
very honest. Most women won't own that that's in there. That's really honest. And that's very real.
It's very real. And
Emotional violence brings that right to the top.
yeah. And so if a and especially if your kids are there and the man is scary to the kids as well, 'cause because they sense their mom is scared or because he's just so big and strong or
But it isn't the big and the strong, it's the feeling behind it. Right?
yeah.
As this thing of emotional awareness, one of the things that's happened with we're all equal is that when men and women get into arguments, women express their anger like very clean and upfront. And so guys think it's okay for them to do that. Right? They think we're equal. I can do that too. And they don't understand that when you're 40, 50, 60, 100 pounds bigger than your wife, and she picked you because one of your qualities is she knows that you will take a bullet for her, but and then you turn that anger to her. The fear becomes you're gonna that you are the bullet. It's not that you'll take the bullet, and it's not conscious. It's not conscious.
Yes.
Like in the rational mind, I'm sure you and the women who've experienced this say, "Oh, this is the guy I love. He would never lay a hand on me." But unconsciously, it's like when a guy is vibrating harmonically, it is spookier 9 times out of 10, not always, spookier for the woman than when the woman's vibrating harmonically. Honestly, when my wife yells at me, I pretty much smile. I'm just like, wow, she's really letting it out. But if I yell at her, she takes a few steps back.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
guys really need to get that, like, how they express I statements, okay.
Yeah.
But I'm so angry with you right now, not going to work. That's got to go someplace else.
Yes.
That's got
Because
to go it
immediately,
goes to the gym. It goes
yeah.
for a walk. It means calling friends. It means practicing some prayer or meditation or mindfulness, which are all shown to build up the thinking part of the brain and shrink that reactionary part of the brain. But most of us guys don't know that. We think my wife's yelling at me, so it's okay for me to yell at her. I can't tell you how many couples I've had come in the room where I asked the wife, "Hey, are you afraid of him?" And she says, "Yeah." And he says, "I never laid a hand on her." And it's a big freaking deal. You never laid a hand on her. She's terrified of you, dude.
Like, what do you think she's making that up? She doesn't wanna be terrified of
I haven't
you.
done anything to make her scared. It's kind of like guys around infidelity, right? They don't get that infidelity isn't when you are in somebody else's body. Infidelity starts emotionally. But they
Mm,
figure as long as they haven't actually had physical contact, it is an infidelity. But they don't get that emotionally, when they meet that woman at work and they start telling her those intimate secrets they only should be sharing with their wife and start connecting with her in a way that he wishes he was doing with his wife, that
mm,
in fact is infidelity. And for a woman, that's worse than if you just went and had sex with a prostitute. If you had sex with a
yes.
prostitute, at least it wouldn't be emotional. It would still suck. The guys just don't get that because they don't have emotional fluency. Most of us. But I'm working with a bunch of guys who are willing to work on this. It's like bringing them in is always the trick. I have to pitch myself to the wives as the husband whisperer, and they bring them in. And that's so, ladies, if you
Yes.
have a husband you want whispered to, give me a call. let me let me tell them about emotional fluency, and maybe they'll be interested. Maybe they want to save their marriage. It isn't about saving the marriage, though. It's maybe they want to really connect with their wife emotionally again, like they did when they first met. Who doesn't want that? That was freaking amazing. We never go back to being in love, but we can have that kind of closeness.
And safety. I keep going back to that word, safety. Just a feeling of I can say whatever I can do, not abuse in an abusive way, but I don't have to worry all the time if he's going to get mad or if in a bad mood or whatever. Just emotional safety.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's scary. It's scary when when you're at home with a child and the person that you've been depending on comes back and they're vibrating.
Yeah.
It's
It
almost
is.
it's also the house felt so good till he came back.
Yeah.
No fun at all.
Yeah. You I that, have you written a book?
I am writing a book called On Men, Masculinity, and Marriage. I'm actually thinking
That's right.
I was thinking today, maybe it's men, masculinity, and emotional fluency. Maybe that's more important because I feel like this thing of emotional fluency, it's not just about marriage. It's about how we approach the people that we work with. It's spirituality. It's what spirituality is really about. Throw the religion out of the room, right? I know I put a label on myself, but it doesn't. The labels don't really matter. Spirituality is about connection and the way we connect with people, right? And the question is, are we connecting with people just to check a box, or are we really connecting with people? And so if I'm at work and I'm really connecting with my coworkers and I really get why they're there and what builds them up and what gives them juice at work, how much better is my connection and support of them And how much better is the work we're going to do if I do that? Or am I going there saying, Lucinda, your job description says you're supposed to be doing A, B, and C, and you seem to only be doing C. What's up? It's just like, it's, and if you go to, there are some women founded businesses out there. They emotionally, they operate very differently. Or there's some women founded businesses that follow the male model, but most of the cutting edge, rapidly growing women owned businesses operate on this model of ecological safety, environmental within the company safety. And yeah, they still fire people when the job doesn't get done, but it's done in a different kind of way and builds
Yes.
people up more. And there's a culture of not just getting it done, but caring while you get it done. It's pretty amazing. And
That is
I feel like that's where we're moving.
oh, that's so incredible. That's so incredible. It's just wonderful.
So grow that baby up, Lucinda. Go start a company and make $1 million.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm frozen, I think. Thank you.
You've had a couple of frozen moments. It's been such a pleasure to be with
I
you and get
know.
to know you a little and talk with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're just a fountain of knowledge, and anyone who listens to this is going to be better for it. And just thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And people need to find me. I guess that's going to be in the
Yes.
note. Everything is rich in relationship. That's all you need. It's rich in
Mhm.
relationship. You can find me on multiple platforms, and the website is rich in relationship. It's all. I'm easy to find.
Yes, you
Just
are.
look me up through Lucinda. I commented badly on your Instagram post about the article, but
Oh.
I found you on Instagram. Love what you're posting. You're on a mission.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate you seeing me. All right. We went way over time, but that's what happens.
Yeah,
Thank you again. And let's keep in touch.
without a doubt.
All right.